If the weather experts are even partially right about their forecasts for the summer months of this year, the crisis that we currently find ourselves teetering on the edge of will likely get worse. Meteorologists, scientists, and even the Farmer's Almanac all indicate that this summer will likely bring record-breaking, searing heat to the United States and parts of Europe. Are you prepared for power and water outages or even rationing? Are you prepared for heat waves and failing harvests? The drought and record high temperatures are projected through this year and as far into the future as we can currently see. Some communities are already feeling the impact. Some states will soon suffer from a lack of electricity and even water, even though it may have just rained where you live on the East Coast or the Great Lakes. And balancing the national grid and maintaining a nationwide food supply will bring these problems to your doorstep. In this video, we're going to take a look at the forecast, the known impact it will have on us, and what you should be doing right now to lessen the impact of the disaster that we're currently facing. Download the Start Preparing Survival Guide to help you prepare for any disaster. I'll post a link in the description and comments section below, or visit cityprepping.com/get started for a free guide to help you get started on your journey of preparedness. What drought? An incredible 53% of the lower 48 states are currently experiencing some level of drought. The summer season of 2022 will be the second consecutive La Niña, also known as the double dip. The La Niña jet stream pattern means an even hotter and drier summer for parts of the United States and Europe. That means the Pacific Northwest may get copious amounts of rain, the Southwest and Midwest almost none. When winter rolls around, most of the country will be unseasonably warm, while the Northwest and Northeast can experience record-breaking cold. If the weather pattern shifts to the El Niño Southern Oscillation pattern in 2023, these same drought areas could receive a deluge of rain so heavy that it cannot be effectively channeled to relieve the drought's impact fully. Last year, winter got off to a promising start with a series of powerful storms that actually improved California's overall drought outlook. However, an unseasonably dry January and February wiped out most gains. The current forecasted temperatures this summer will only exacerbate the problem by accelerating the evaporation rate. If the weather patterns continue for a third year, major hydroelectric generators like the massive Hoover Dam will soon be forced offline. Nearly every major city across the Northeast and Midwest experienced more 90-degree days than typical last year. Meteorological summer doesn't officially start until June 1st, but parts of the country are already experiencing temperatures in the 80s and 90s as early as February, while precipitation levels stayed at record lows. Indeed, except for the Pacific Northwest, everything from the Pacific to the Missouri River will likely be hotter and drier than we've ever seen. The rest of the country will be wetter with intense and severe weather. Derechos, tornadoes, thunderstorms, and hurricanes. At this point, the forecasts indicate it will not be a lovely summer for anyone. It won't impact me. Let me start off by addressing what may be on many viewers' minds when watching this video. It won't impact me in my part of the country because I don't live in the Southwest. The reality is that you don't have to live in a western state to suffer the consequences. If you already see the price increases at the grocery store, you can expect them to go up even further. If you are accustomed to stock shelves with a large selection, you may one day be surprised to realize how many of your products are grown or manufactured from resources in western states. You may pay mere pennies for your water and electricity now, but when water and energy are rerouted, you can expect those costs to rise. The North Electric Reliability Corporation has already warned blackouts could hit much of America's Midwest. The minor problems of droughts and heat waves, they're compounded by extreme weather and infrastructure and disrepair with parts that are unavailable because of supply chain failures. This is another perfect storm of disasters. Simply throwing more coal in the fire, adding more renewables, and even building a nuclear reactor at this point, it may help in the short term but will have no effect on the inevitable. There is a common and oft-repeated myth that the water crisis in the West results from mismanagement of the water. It is easy to see why some people might come to that conclusion. The fact is that California does indeed dump water into the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, an estuary where salt water from the sea mixes with fresh water from the Sierra snowpack runoff. Water from the delta is used for irrigation and drinking water, and if too little fresh water is present, then seawater would fill the gaps. If the fresh water is not allowed to migrate, you would have salt water that is neither fit for consumption nor agriculture. It's also not true that all of Southern California suffers from a drought. San Diego, for example, has a desalination plant that takes water right from the ocean. The plant delivers nearly 50 million gallons of fresh, desalinated water to San Diego County daily. That is enough to serve approximately 400,000 people. It isn't enough, though, for the 3.3 million residents of the county, but it does offset the drought conditions a bit. Don't dismiss a genuine drought crisis with pundit sound bites. Instead, look at the very real subsequent phases of this deepening drought condition. You may also hear people say that what we're seeing is cyclical and happens every several hundred or thousand years or so. And that may be true, but at the same time in our historical past, the population was not where it is today. The infrastructure we rely upon was not in place. Power lines weren't strewn across the land from power generating facilities to homes. Hydroelectric dams, pumping facilities, and water treatment plants, they simply didn't exist. Indeed, large-scale farming operations did not produce a quarter of the rest of the country's food. It is true that California faced significant droughts in the last several decades. Droughts, they do happen with some regularity. Unfortunately, the droughts we have seen in the century are happening with greater frequency, record dryness, record heat, and cover a much larger geographical area. And they're not just limited to California. Not to mention, the population of California has increased by 17 million people since 1976. Hence, demand has grown for both water, food, and electricity. The population of Colorado has increased from 500,000 to 5.6 million in the same period. Arizona went from 1.1 million to over 7 million. There are significant infrastructure challenges today that previous drought generations never had to wrestle with. We need to accept and prepare for the standpoint that neither renewable nor fossil fuel industries will be there to rescue us when the mercury rises and the power systems fail. Realistically, though, any solution to the crisis will have to be plugged in by you. The impact of this year's mega drought and accompanying record temperatures could dramatically alter your way of life moving forward. Understand that the top 5 energy companies in the United States control $416.2 billion of the market. Energy and water like natural gas, they're not guaranteed to you, even if it's produced next door or pumped up from the ground right outside your town. These resources flow to the highest bidder in a free market. That might be the state next to you. It could even be across your nation's borders. Don't make the mistake of thinking the government can do anything about it. And don't make the error of thinking your current supply of resources from any for-profit entity is at all guaranteed. Instead, anticipate that if you live west of the Mississippi River, you run the risk of a prolonged blackout. What should you expect next? In many western states, water rationing, fines, and even flow restriction devices are inevitable and in some places already being implemented. We've already seen flow restrictions regarding electricity, as electricity providers have asked some areas of Texas to avoid charging electrical devices during peak hours. In the coming months, it is a high probability that several hydroelectric facilities will need to go offline. Energy from other grids will need to be siphoned off to meet demand. All the while, a scorching summer sun will result in higher demand. Natural gas could help offset the hydroelectric demand. Still, with it more profitable to ship American natural gas to Europe and the high cost and demand for liquid natural gas, it isn't much of a solution to the overall disequilibrium of the power structure. Natural gas will flow to the highest bidding country, which it's not necessarily the same country from which it was initially extracted. Finally, the higher temperatures result in drier and windier conditions. That results in the higher probability of devastating fires. Those fires often result from high winds, and those fires can easily take out electrical networks. So, people can expect rolling blackouts, high rates, and even periods of extended outages are probable. Even if you don't live in the west portion of the country, you still will feel the impact. It could be due to routing power or water to those trouble zones or away from municipalities to farm and industrial endeavors, but it will likely take the form of higher prices and food scarcity. Just 3 of the drought-affected states account for 25% of all the agriculture produced in the United States. That is an incredible $92.8 billion of agriculture product every year. Picture it this way. Think of 4 items you had at dinner last night. Now, take one of those from the table. Maybe that's the potatoes because a crop failed. Perhaps that's the beef because ranchers downsize their herds because of less water and skyrocketing grain prices. And we're just at the beginning stages of the warmer season too. The crops currently in the ground have to endure the still to come scorching temperatures of summer. Crop failures are more likely as the temperatures increase in the drier months ahead. Farmers cannot just pivot to another agriculture product. The reality is that the meteoric rise in the price of fertilizer and water scarcity have forced some farmers and ranchers to downsize and scale back their operations. Precisely when demand is highest, Yields will be both intentionally, by choice, and unintentionally, by weather, reduced. Beyond energy, water, wildfires, and food scarcity, you must prepare for the overall weather impact wherever you live. The chances for the continental United States and the Caribbean islands to experience hurricane activity increases substantially during La Niña. La Niña years show a significant increase in higher category tornado outbreaks and an increase in the number of devastating tornadoes. And as mentioned earlier, the colder temperatures and harsh weather in the Northeast and Midwest are dramatically increased during the winter months. Cold air from the north can violently descend deep into Texas, and Texans are well aware now of power outages that can result from that. To put it as simplistically as possible, what affects one area affects others. Just because your region may not be in a drought does not mean your area will be immune to the overall effects. What should you do? First, ensure that your food, water, and energy preps are all in order. Having a supply of water, food, and backup energy will make you less susceptible to suffering from either outages or food scarcity. Planting a drought-tolerant vegetable garden will offset some of the food scarcities that may be coming in higher prices that I can guarantee will occur. Replacing sprinklers with drip lines can also benefit you. Before this is over, some communities will likely rule that you should let your lawn die off or face fines. In creating a precipitation collection system and ensuring runoff systems capture whatever rain falls, it's going to help you conserve water resources. And this rain will fall again, likely in torrents over several days or weeks once it starts. However, flash floods are possible when the soil is so dry and compacted, much of the water just simply washes over the drought-stricken land instead of seeping down into it. The result, unfortunately, is that aquifers across the countries will continue to drop lower. Groundwater depletion is possible in some areas, even as rain occasionally falls. And this will impact both industry and individuals. And make sure that no matter where you live, you have established some type of rain collection system. Even a rain barrel connected to gutters can provide emergency supply of water or sufficient water for a small garden area. If you live in an area where either fires or high winds are possible, make sure you prep for these. I would encourage you to clear brush, trim tree branches, install shutters or other semi-permanent wind protection, and definitely check out the sills and insulation. High winds are a significant cause of blackouts, so keep an emergency kit handy with everything you need to spend hours or days without electricity. If you are living in a wet region right now, expect that you might receive a lot more precipitation than average, even as part of the country gets even drier. I would encourage you to conserve water, remove lawns and replace them with drought-tolerant plants, install rain barrels, and create defensible space around your house if you live near wild areas where fire or flood is possible. If you live in a zone where fire is possible, even in a suburb you think is completely safe, have a fire evacuation plan in place. Consider having a bug-out plan, which I'll link to below. Have established rendezvous points with your family members, and have a plan for when you only have mere minutes that will determine your survival. Assess your dependence on systems outside of your preps. If you require, for example, medications that also require refrigeration, how will you keep these medicines in their cold temperature range after the power goes out for several days or even a week or more? And I would also encourage you to check out something like a small gas generator or a solar battery system. I recently did a video covering these options, which I'll post a link to up in the cards above and in the description section below. Have something like a small backup refrigerator if it fits your medical needs. If you do use a gas generator, please be careful about fumes and potential fire risk. I'll be releasing a video in the next few days covering a product that will power your whole home with renewable power. Though such a thing is expensive, which I'll detail in the video, something like this could be worth the investment at this point. In anticipation of a power outage during an extreme heat event, ensure that you have fully charged flashlights. Make sure that you know how to actually open your garage door when there's no electricity. Make sure that you have your preps to survive a week or more without electricity and with extreme heat. Make sure that you have a bug-out bag packed and ready to go if you live anywhere near a fire zone. I personally do, and I'm going to be going through over the next few weeks reorganizing and making sure, double-checking, triple-checking all my gear to make sure that we're ready. At the very least, if you live in one of these heat zones, ensure that you have the means to keep cool should the power go out. Also, use natural ventilation and battery-powered fans if you can to keep your home cool. Keep curtains and blinds closed during the day. Drink plenty of water and put cold water on your body's pulse points. I would also encourage you to consider wearing a wet hand towel or using a spray bottle to mist yourself. The reality is that this drought and the forecasted heat still to come are simply unavoidable. They will have ramifications for everyone across the country, from the very direct and real possibility of rolling blackouts to the indirect ramifications of lower crop yields and higher prices. Consumer demand for energy will surge to combat the higher temperatures, and power will be allocated to commercial endeavors, so prepare for that. Everyday people are going to be blamed and charged extra costs as a result. Expect that the genuine possibility of rationing, fines, and flow control devices will be required. Also, don't expect these problems to go away, even when the rain finally cycles back. If the current forecasts are even fractionally correct, you will likely be adding heat and drought to the problems of this decade when you talk about it years later. If you plan to be around to talk about it, you have to start preparing for it right now. The impact of the summer's heat will be felt most dramatically beginning in just about 2 months. This doesn't give you much time to prepare or restock essential preps, but do what you can in the time that you've been given. As always, please stay safe out there.